Great to have you along for the ride. Thanks a lot for stopping by. Glad to have this man back. He's a friend of mine. We follow each other on social media. He's a paisan. That means a lot to me. It's Sal Greco. Sal, how are you? Good to see you.
It's great to be here, Joe. It's great to see you. You know, obviously I've been waiting a while because, as you know, when I go on Instagram, I always race to your page to see the latest Joe Biden gaffe or whatever he's done today. You just posted something, so
Yeah.
I got to laugh today. That's my.
But well, here's the thing. He takes 11 days off, and that puts a real problem in my gears. I got to go talk about Kamala Harris or something. And as bad as she is, or Joy, what's her face, Behar, it's nothing like Joe Biden standing in front of like a sports team, and then at the end going, what do I do? Where do I go? He literally said, "Should I leave?" And I actually put the caption up because I couldn't believe it. So, Sal, we've had you on before. A little background on you, former NYPD cop. You were a guy who loved the job, a guy who didn't do anything wrong, and then you say you were fired because you're friends with Roger Stone. I mean, I'm friends with Roger Stone. I guess I couldn't get a job at the NYPD. Did they literally say to you, because you're hanging out with this guy, you can't work here?
That's exactly what they did, Joe. It's on my paperwork that they handed to me that stated, and it was actually 1 year ago tomorrow on August the 8th that they officially came to my door and told me I was officially terminated. So what they had stated, Joe, is that because I was, and it's a patrol guide procedure, which for everyone out there doesn't understand, the patrol guide is what every New York police officer has to follow, meaning the police commissioner and down, not just the cops. They have to follow these rules. And one of the rules in there states that you cannot wrongfully or knowingly associate with someone who's reasonably believed to have engaged in or likely to have engaged in criminal activity. And they stated that this was Roger Stone and one of his employees. And they basically were, earmarking Roger Stone over and over and over and over and over again at my trial and all my paperwork. I mean, you didn't know who was on trial, me or Roger, when I went to the administrative trial. And he ultimately terminated me for this. And they also stated that it was uncompensated security, some made-up term that they just drew out of thin air. And they said I gave them misleading statements because every time they asked me if I was Roger's security, I stated no. And that's why I turned around and I had to sue them immediately after. And I've been in a legal battle with them ever since. It's been a year now.
Sal, it doesn't make any sense because Roger Stone got a full pardon. So calling him a criminal to begin with doesn't make any sense. No matter what he's been through, his record is what his record is now. But you also make the comparison to Cardi B. You said she was brought in there by the higher-ups into the NYPD, and anybody and everybody that talked to her that day could have been cavorting with a known criminal. This is a person who is known to have committed crimes, right?
That is correct, Joe. In fact, she committed a crime last week in Las Vegas. She threw a
we saw her throw the microphone, right?
Threw a microphone at somebody, and that was not, they were throwing water at. She actually agitated the crowd and stated to throw the water at her. So the whole incident was started by Cardi B. If
you see the whole video, she literally says, "Throw the water on me," correct, and enjoys it for the first while, and then one last guy does it, and he gets the microphone upside the head. So here's somebody, what did you tell me? She's a known gang member, too, or cavorts with gang members?
She's a known gang member, that is right. She's a known gang member by her own words, and then she is very adversarial to the police department. So, Joe, they paraded her around the police academy. And then in the court papers in a recent filing where they tried the motion to dismiss, they're stating that I bizarrely, which is not even a word, bizarrely claimed that Cardi B came to the police academy when it was a court order. The only problem is the illustrious mayor of New York, Eric Adams, a couple of days later in a press conference stated that they invited her to the police academy.
Wow.
So they invited someone who's reasonably believed to have engaged in or likely to have engaged in criminal activity. And then she hobnobbed all the cops. And he also stated we don't discard people. I mean, this guy has plenty of one-liners, but he said we don't discard people. But you discarded me and Roger Stone. And tell me, what's the difference between Roger and Cardi B? And that's just one instance, Joe. There's a million instances now. There's a lot more.
It's Sal Greco, former NYPD police officer, salgreco.com, SalGreco.com. Go to his website. He's also on Rumble, the Sal Greco. For me, it doesn't make any sense, but then you watch this guy, Eric Adams, as he acts out. It's very strange, the things that he says. The other day, he insulted all waiters or something because he said the haters become his waiters or something. I don't know what that is. But here's a guy. I posted the video the other day of New York City that was taken by your friend, and I want to make sure that we give proper credit. And in that video, it shows illegal aliens all over the sidewalk in like Manhattan. They're just everywhere. And they got less than 100,000 in New York City. Here, where I sit in Texas, we've gotten 7 million. Okay.
Yep.
So I don't want to do little Del Rio, Texas, and McAllen, Texas, and Brownsville, Texas, and so on. They can't handle this. The tax base in New York, at a city where Eric Adams said he's a sanctuary city, welcomes everybody, they are crumbling under 100,000. What are you hearing from people on the street there? First of all, tell people whose video that was. But secondly, what are you hearing from your friends at the NYPD, your friends up in New York City? I mean, why are they falling apart over 100,000 people?
Well, Joe, that was actually viral news, New York. You can follow him on Twitter. He's also on Instagram. He also has another account called Leroy Press. And he goes around and he gets all the grunt work that other reporters won't cover. So he's been all over this migrant crisis. And if you haven't noticed, Joe, they seem to be shipping them all to Roosevelt Hotel, which has now become like a war zone of, just full of migrants there.
Right.
And they don't even have the space to put them in a shelter. They don't have room anywhere. So now Eric Adams has come up with some brilliant plan of there's 3,000 locations that they want to put these different migrants, meaning he'll ship them around, or 100 here, or 200 here. And a lot of locations seem to be city parks. I heard the Shore Road and Bay Ridge, Brooklyn was another spot. So people have been protesting this, and kudos to Curtis Sliwa, who's actually he's an anti-Eric Adams activist there.
He should be the mayor, yeah.
He did run for mayor. Unfortunately, he lost because, in New York City, it's 7-1 Democrat to Republican as far as voting goes. So he's been out there and he's raising the alarm bells, and he's saying, look, here's a location out the other day in Sunset Park in Brooklyn where everybody came out in the neighborhood, Democrats and Republicans, to protest and say, look, we can't have all these migrants in the street or in the hotel or in the park. I mean, get a grip on this, Eric. And, Eric Adams, he originally invited all of these migrants over. He said, this is the American dream. We're a sanctuary city. But now he's crying to the federal government saying, you got to help me with this. He went to the White House, and then what happens there? I mean, Joe Biden, I don't know if he was, sleeping or not. Who knows? Because he doesn't know what's going on.
Right.
He told him, I'm going to give you a liaison. And then between the White House and City Hall, nobody can even tell you who this person is, if the person was given to them. It's just chaos. So
Biden basically blew him off and has no respect for the guy. And again, you're right. Biden doesn't know where he is half the time. It's Sal Greco. Follow him, the Sal Greco, on social media, Twitter and Instagram, both. The Sal Greco, SalGreco. You could also go follow him, salgreco.com, on his website. Great insight, because this guy is not up for the job.
No.
Are we, though, Sal? Are we at the point to where my friend Rudy Giuliani got the job? And he's not running, but my meaning is this. In the early 1990s, Democrats and Republicans had enough. They'd had enough of the smut. They'd had enough of the prostitutes. They had enough of the vice. They had enough of the mob rule that was taking over New York City. And Rudy Giuliani won because it didn't matter if he was red or blue. What mattered was he was a law and order guy. Are we there yet? I just saw something over the weekend where some idiot influencer was giving away a PS5 or something. And you had mayhem in the streets, people getting beaten upside the head, who's getting run over, who's jumping up and down on cars. Are we at that point in New York City to where they're ready to hold their nose and vote red and get some law and order back?
You know something, Joe? I'm thinking how corrupt the entire voting system is, including New York City. And I don't think you're at that point. I think they would still tomorrow would vote for Eric Adams. It probably be close. It'll be close, kind of like when Rudy first ran against David Dinkins and he barely lost.
Right.
And then the second time he barely won. And I think that's the kind of dynamics. Is the demographics have changed in New York City. I mean, Joe, the only reason they even care about what happened on Friday with that whole insurrection that happened, that riot that happened at Union Square, is if that happens to, the elitists that live in New York in front of their house, then they'll have a problem with Eric Adams.
Right.
But who is Eric Adams blaming for that? Oh, it's the parenting, bad parenting. That was a complete and total failure of public safety, which he made his number one priority when he was campaigning and getting elected. And what has he really done? His entire police department is in an upheaval. His fire department is in upheaval. And the head is deputy mayor of public safety this wonderful character named Philip Banks, who was an unindicted co-conspirator years ago as a chief of department. He's in charge of this stuff. And I mean, you saw all the white shirts, all the executives, the NYPD, all the chiefs, they were running for their life as they were getting hit with all those rocks and bricks, and it was pickaxes. And then what did they do? They were standing around. Oh, we showed a lot of restraint. Joe, you think this would have ever happened under Rudy Giuliani or Bernie?
No.
Really?
Well, no, because Bernie and Rudy both had their back. They had the NYPD cop back. And right now we're seeing officers, it's a couple of years ago now, being splashed with water. They can't do anything. They can't react. But having stuff thrown at them, having the cars jumped on, they can't do anything. These guys and gals know that if they dare uphold the law, and if they end up having to take somebody to the ground and maybe kicking them in the head or tasing them, or God forbid somebody gets a broken arm or something, they're going to be out of a job and probably face charges because you got idiots like Alvin Bragg in the U.S. Attorney's or in the District Attorney's office. So they aren't getting. Nobody has their back. So what are you hearing from cops? Are they going, listen, I'm just going to put in my 8 or 12 hours and go home, or are they willing to en masse show up at Union Square and say, look, this ain't happening again. You guys aren't doing this here.
Well, the cops are only going to be doing what they're told, and they don't want to risk what you just said. They could lose their job. They could be sued. There's also something called the Civilian Complaint Review Board. And this is a anti-police. I mean, it's a total socialist leftist takeover where they bring you in, where anybody can make any kind of claim, and basically you will be found guilty of anything. I mean, one of my friends is a cop. His name is Eric Dim. He's the most complained cop in NYPD history. He has 128 complaints or something on him. He's still involved in lawsuits 3 years after he retired. He was a lieutenant, and they just keep coming with these continuous complaints. And I mean, they take these complaints. Some of them are ridiculous, but they'll find you guilty, and they want you either terminated or take 30 days from you. Now, I look at everything in a full spectrum. Some cops are a little overzealous. Some cops just don't want to do anything.
Right.
A lot of times, Joe, these people that make complaints, like you saw the other day, what is this going to cost New York City taxpayer?
A lot.
How much damage, Joe? They were jumping on top of police officers' cars. They were jumping on top of city buses. They actually slashed a cop's neck and took his gun.
Oh, my God.
Numerous cops that went to the hospital. None that Eric Adams says. He never said in his press conference, I will not stand for any violence against my police officers. You don't find that a little odd that he just left that one part of his speech out, one thing saying, hey, you can't do this to my police officers. I won't accept the violence. I mean, this was almost like a bloodbath. And what will it take? A fatality of a police officer? Because that's what's going to come if you continue down this road. It's total chaos. City council's out of control in New York City. You have a migrant crisis. And by the way, Eric Adams is involved in multiple scandals all around him. His whole regime and his whole era of being a mayor is full of corruption. It's full of corruption.
Yeah. No, it's Sal Greco. Go to salgreco.com. Follow him, the Sal Greco, on all the social media. Former NYPD cop. Did you ever work with Eric Adams? Did you know the guy?
I only knew him as he was the Brooklyn borough president, I believe. Okay. And I did go to the Brooklyn DA's office a lot. I had numerous cases there. As you know, I have over 320 arrests and was involved in 1,000 arrests. So I was going in and out of the courthouse, and I believe his office was not too far from there. So I would kind of run into him. I never really said hello, or he said hello, but I knew who he was. But I believe he actually was friends or knew Roger. Because at the time of Joe Bruno's trial, when he was the state senator, it was Eric Adams who was sitting in the front row of that court and in support of Joe Bruno, who was a Republican.
I didn't know that.
Yes, and Roger used to see him every day. So they know each other, but then he'll turn around and basically he'll back the police saying, yeah, Roger Stone is a criminal and we must fire Sal Greco. Because that's basically what he let his police commissioner do.
Well, what bothers me the most about your story, well, a lot of things bother me about your story, but the whole idea that they knew they really couldn't get you on cavorting with a known criminal, because that's just bogus. Yep. You would have won that. They tried to say that you were working without their permission for Roger, and then they admitted that you were allegedly working free of charge. How is that working? I've seen you walking around with Roger. Next time I'm in Florida, I'll probably walk around with you. Doesn't mean that I'm your security or you're mine. It means we're a couple of dudes taking a walk. So how do they plan on making that stick? They really used that as the linchpin to get rid of you, alleging that you were moonlighting basically for free with Roger.
That's the word. Many officers, they say moonlight, off duty. I've never
Right.
moonlighted for anyone. They checked all my financials. I mean, they illegally used the court order, which I threw into the my amended complaint. They accessed someone's sealed records and used it against me in violation of a court order.
Wow.
You can't do that, and they did that in my case, and I have a record of it. And I presented this to the judge. So we're going to see how all of that goes. But they kept saying that I was uncompensated security for Roger. So right now, Joe, their police commissioner, this guy by the name of Ed Caban, his brother is a convicted criminal. He was locked up as a sergeant when he beat up on a poor cab driver in a car in handcuffs. He was found guilty and on the job. They threw him off the job at that time. His case, though, became a hung jury, so he wasn't convicted of that. But later on, he was known as the slumlord of the Bronx, and then he was convicted of that and thrown in jail.
Wow.
And he's pictured with Eric Adams, Ed Caban, the owner of this place called Consafritos, in the Bronx, this guy Jimmy Rodriguez, a.k.a. Jimmy Bronx Cafe, pictured with him. They're all in this place together. They're all hanging out, and they're all laughing. Everybody's hanging out with each other. Jimmy Bronx Cafe, who once tried to run his wife over, was arrested for that.
Wow.
This place, meaning that it's been in the YouTube on this podcast that they said Jimmy's Bronx Cafe, which was the name of his restaurant a few years ago, used to have cocaine buffets with baseball players and celebrities there. So it's a known drug den. Yet I see many officers pictured being there. The chief of department, Philip Banks, Eric Adams, the Letitia James, the lieutenant governor of New York. They all hang out in this one place with Caban and his brother. I mean, what's going on at Consafritos, Joe? And
obviously, it's really, really good food.
Eric Adams.
It's really good food. That's what it is, Sal. Everybody shows up into one place. Come on. I mean, it's obvious that there's something really wrong going on. Sal, do me a favor. Come back on again soon. Go and follow this guy everywhere. The Sal Greco. Sal Greco, Greco.com. Go follow him, The Sal Greco, on social media. Really love the story that you tell. I'm glad that you're telling the truth. I hope that you'll be exonerated at some point by somebody who's got a brain after Eric Adams is gone. And do me a favor. Keep on coming back on, my friend.
I will, Joe. Thanks for everything. And folks, you can go to salgreco.com if you want to support me. There's a support button. You could also buy any shirt in there. I got a new shirt on there that says hashtag Fugazi, since I'm dealing with the whole situation here is a Fugazi. Yeah. All right. And thank you all for your support. God bless. And I'll see you soon, Joe. Yeah,
we'll talk soon. Fugazi is fake in Italian. That's why you go there and check that out. It's Sal Greco. Go to his website, salgreco.com. We're back after this. Stay here.